Cartwright, and I am the Executive Director for Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories, Incorporated. Today's date is May 1st, 2021, and we're located, what is the name of this complex?
Lake Ashton.
Lake Ashton. And we also have, I'm going to say one more word, we have another, I have an assistant sitting in with me by the name of Calvin Posman. And he's also one of my ex-subject guinea pigs for the Veterans History Project in the Library of Congress. So, all of that being said, Jim,
Yes.
when is your birthday?
February 13th, 1950.
And what is your full name?
James Paul Gawrych, Jr.
Okay, when is your birthday?
February 13th, 1950.
Jim is a comedian, we can clearly see that. Okay, and what is your current address?
4072 Tralee Drive, Lake Wales, Florida.
All right. Okay, and where did you grow up?
Toledo, Ohio.
Okay, what branch of the service were you in?
United States Army.
And what war did you serve in?
Vietnam.
Okay. What was your rank when you separated?
Sergeant First Class, E7.
Okay. What were you doing before you went into service?
Majoring in football and blackjack and minoring in pre-med at the University of Toledo.
Okay, fun times at, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Grades kind of showed it.
So, were you drafted or were you enlisted?
I enlisted.
You enlisted?
Two-year enlistment.
I'm sorry?
A 2-year enlistment.
2-year enlisted. You enlisted in Toledo?
Yes.
Okay. And what year was that?
1969.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living at my grandmother's house
Okay.
in Toledo.
All right. And so, where was basic training at?
We went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for a week for reception, and then they shipped half of us off to Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. Why did you go into that branch? Did you have the opportunity to switch branches or not?
My uncle was in the Army in World War II. He actually went in at the end of World War II and was stationed in New Mexico. Never got overseas, but I was always, growing up, I was always kind of thinking Army.
I'm sorry, say it again, that last part?
I was always thinking Army because of my uncle. Whenever I thought about the military, I always thought Army. I didn't want to be a Marine, Navy,
Nothing else?
Air Force, no.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So where did you go to basic training?
Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. And how long was basic training?
It was supposed to be 8 weeks. We had started with a 0 week, so we ended up with 9 weeks.
And so tell me about basic training. What was that like?
Well, I had just come off football, so that I was at spring training. So I felt in pretty good shape. It's still, they could still get it out of you. So we did a lot of calisthenics. We learned the run, dodge, and jump, and all the good cals, and it was enjoyable. And I kept thinking of Gomer Pyle. Got me in trouble one time, but thinking the show Gomer Pyle, because I actually smiled when somebody was yelling at somebody and got me in trouble.
What? What does that mean?
Well, my drill sergeant was chewing up one side and down the other, and I could picture Gomer Pyle getting yelled at on TV. And so I cracked a smile, and he said, "You think it's funny, big man?" And I said, "No, drill sergeant." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what." And he made a challenge to me, and then later it all kind of fell through, and I told him I was sorry and it would never happen again, and he said, "Okay, make sure it doesn't." That was the end of that.
Okay, all right. Speaking of drill sergeants, what were yours like? Do you remember them?
Yes.
How many did you have?
We had two.
Uh-huh.
There were, well, all of them were your drill sergeants, but we had
Right.
two for the
assigned to your
yeah,
platoon?
the second platoon.
Okay, right.
Yeah, second to none.
So tell me about them. What were they like?
Drill Sergeant Hoare was a 22-month veteran of Vietnam and had been with the 101st Airborne Division. So that, in a way, that was kind of neat because that's where I ended up. And the other fellow was an E6. He was an actual teddy bear, actually had the hat and had gone through the drill sergeant training. And to be honest with you, I can't remember his name. I remember Sergeant Hoare, but I don't remember his name. But he was tough. He was a kind of small guy, and Sergeant Hoare was larger. He was closer to my size.
Okay. And how did they treat you?
Well, it all depends when we're talking. At the beginning, they treated us like we were lower than whale do, but as we got better, and that was the idea, I think, with basic training. After about 3-4 weeks, they started building you up. They tore you down to absolutely nothing, and we were all like that. And then they started building us back up. And when we got through with basic training, we felt pretty proud of ourselves.
What was that? Pretty what?
After we finished, we all felt pretty proud of ourselves.
Okay, gotcha. So that overwhelming feeling of accomplishment that you made it through hell and high water.
Yep, the system worked.
Okay. All right, so basic training was how long?
Well, 8 weeks plus a 0 week, 9 weeks.
Plus a what?
A 0 week.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you got to catch your breath, kind of, maybe?
Well, no, the 0 week came first. They would take and run you around the quadrangle. They'd be doing different things, and they'd say, "This doesn't even count. You don't start till next week." And get there on Tuesday, and on Wednesday more people came. Thursday more people came. Friday more people. So if you came later in the week, you only had 8 weeks, but we actually had 9 because we came on Tuesday. So.
Okay. All right, so after basic training, did you go home on leave or did you go to your tech school?
No, went straight to my tech school.
And where was that at?
Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
And how long were you there?
It was an 8-week class.
And what was your MOS?
At that point, 13 Alpha, which became 13 Bravo.
And what the heck is that?
That is field artillery.
Field artillery?
Field artillery.
Ordnance, huh?
No, field artillery.
Oh,
You're on the guns.
You're on the...
You're on the 105s, the 155s, later 8-inch, 175. So you actually are, what you learn in school is the 105s because they have the shortest range. So you'll be on a 105 howitzer.
Okay, well, so tell us about that 8-week training experience. Were there any casualties at the end? Were there any casualties in basic training?
No.
Okay, were there any casualties during your tech training?
No.
Thank God. Okay, that's a good thing. All right, so how did it go? What was it comprised of?
With all the different training, after basic training and coming out with such great attitude, when you went to AIT, they kind of tried to repeat some of the things, and at that point you felt like, now I'm a soldier. And they would tell you, you're not a soldier until you have an MOS, until you have a military occupational specialty. So all of a sudden, being treated really badly didn't feel the same as when you were in basic. In basic, you felt you deserved it. In AIT, you didn't. You thought, hey, teach me my job, what I'm going to be doing. So it wasn't as enjoyable as basic, but not for physical reasons.
Okay, so. Tell me more.
Well, basic thing is I wasn't that impressed with the NCOs. I did have a good captain who eventually came to our aid and explained, why some of the things that were going on.
So you're saying the captain saved the day?
In a way, yeah,
Okay.
He did.
All right. What was going on?
Well, 5 weeks into advanced training, we're getting ready. We know that some people are going to be going to Vietnam in just over 3 weeks. and they decided they wanted to send us home with all number ones, which is shave all the hair.
Right.
And you did that in basic training, and
Yeah.
you kept your hair short in basic training. But when you're 5 weeks into AIT, you expect to start having a little bit of hair, still within military regulation. And they decided it was time to cut it all off again. And there was no reason for it.
And that made everybody very unhappy.
It made everybody very unhappy.
So what was the reaction?
We just, we complained, and then they told us we shouldn't be complaining. And they eventually stopped it. And fortunately, I was doing a lot of the complaining too.
Okay.
And fortunately, I didn't lose all my hair.
So I know you told me, I think, where was the basic training? Where was your tech training again? What's
Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? Okay, so you were there for 8 weeks. So did you go home on leave after that?
Yeah.
For how long?
I think it was 14 days. It was,
Okay,
it was
so
short. It was somewhere between 10 and 14 days.
Went back home and visited your family, correct?
Right.
Okay, so how did that go? How long was the leave?
It was 10 to 13 days. We or 10 to 14 days. I'd come down on orders for Vietnam. We got our orders when we
you had your
graduated, and it turned out only 35 of us out of 190 something. Only 35 of us were going to Vietnam. The rest were going to either Korea, Germany, or somewhere in the States.
Okay.
So,
All right, so you went home for, what did you say, 10, 13 days?
10 to 14 days. Yeah.
Okay, and so now you got orders to go to Vietnam. So where did you go? Where was your first stop?
Had to go to the Oakland Army Base out in Oakland, California.
Yeah, okay.
They put you in a big warehouse. And
Right.
once you go in there, you can't leave until you come out on your manifest. And I was there 2 days. And when you get manifested, then they set you up. You go to the airport. They put you in a bus. You go to the airport. You get on the plane, and then you head on over.
Okay. How long were you in Oakland?
Not quite 2 days.
Okay.
Day and a
then
half,
you're
2
gone.
days. Yeah.
So where did you land in Vietnam?
When we got to Vietnam, we landed in Bien Hoa, and that down in Three Corps.
And is that where you were stationed, or they shipped you by vehicle, or?
I was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, and about 2-3 weeks before that, they had all moved up to I Corps up north, and the only thing left there was P training. We went through a 6-day P training, and then we shipped up to Camp Eagle or Camp Evans, and I went to Camp Eagle.
Camp what?
Eagle.
Okay.
At Camp Eagle and Camp Evans, depending on, and I was First Brigade. First Brigade was at Camp Eagle.
Okay, so how long was your tour in Vietnam?
Well, it was 12 months. I ended up serving 11 months, 17 days.
Say that, what was it?
It was a 12-month tour, and I ended up serving 11 months and 17 days. I got a 15-day drop.
Okay. So tell me about your tour.
I started
First,
out.
let's start with,
I'm sorry?
I apologize. I said, first let's start with how many casualties
Well,
that you roughly can,
there were quite a few.
okay.
WIAs and KIAs. And
WIA
yeah, wounded in action, killed in action.
and, okay,
We did the sit reps, situation reports, and so we would get the number when we'd have a contact.
Was it like 24 hours? Was it just part of the day? Was it all day, all week, 7 days?
No, it was, you would go through days, weeks where nothing really was happening, an
Right.
occasional trail watch or something. And then you'd hit just a certain points where it would get hot and where you would lose some soldiers and you'd usually get a pretty decent body count as well. So, we definitely wanted to win. We didn't want to lose people for nothing. So.
Right.
And so you would go through that. I started out my first couple months I was in the rear, Camp Eagle, and they would say there's no such thing as a rear, but it basically was. It was fairly secure. And I did the first 2 months delivering ammo out to the fire bases by truck. And then also I did 3 weeks of mess hall driving. And I said, this isn't what I think I came here for. And unfortunately, somebody had gotten killed. Fire base rifle had gotten overrun with a sapper attack, and one of the fellows I knew had gotten killed, and they needed a replacement. And so the captain called me in and said, "You want to see some action?" And you know, it's kind of like one of those, you put your foot in your mouth and you know you don't know how to take it out. And so my answer was,
I get it, yeah.
my answer was yes, sir. And I was on a chopper out with an E6, and because we'd also lost a sergeant as well.
So was that your job on the helicopter? Or
No,
what?
I went out on the helicopter to a fire base, fire base rifle, and I was in the Tactical Operations Center, the command post. That's the TOC CP, and that's where, when you've got the units out around the fire base, or even on the fire base, then what you have to do is you set up, when they need support, you set up artillery, you set up Cobras, and then anytime we CA, then we'd set up the CA, and then we would do the combat assault, and we would go out with, make sure that we had 8 minutes of artillery fire,
Right.
followed by, at the end, 1 minute of total workout with Cobras, and then the choppers would come in, the Hueys, and they'd start dropping the people off. And the idea was you go in, and if you do all that prep, 8 minutes plus 1 minute, you do all that prep, you shouldn't have anybody shooting back at you. So it usually worked that way. Not always, but usually did.
So when it didn't work out the way that you hoped, how did it work out?
Well, if it didn't work out, in the one case, got 3 choppers down. So we got on the ground that release. And when I say on the ground, they barely touch.
Yeah.
You know, and you have 6 guys per chopper that jump off. So we had 18 guys, and then we started taking small arms fire. So the Cobras come back, they work around the area around. Meantime, the 18 guys set up a quick perimeter, and then once the Cobras work them out again, then they come back in and deliver the rest of the platoon or the rest of the company, depending, you know, how many choppers you're bringing in. And then you're on the ground, and from there, then whatever your mission is, you go from there. You know?
Okay.
You set up, if it's a base, you're setting up a base, a fire base. If it's not, you're moving from the landing zone, so LZ. You're moving from there, then you're moving to wherever your mission calls. You know, and the commander knows where you're going, the lieutenants know where you're going. You know, and once we know where we're going, we head out.
Okay. Besides what you've already told me, do you have any other memorable, a couple of more outstanding incidents that occurred? And we can come back to that, or if you got it right now, do you want to speak on it?
You know, you're dealing with different times where you know you get where you get somebody taking pot shots. When I went to rifle after the sapper attack, I wasn't there for the sapper attack. I went like the next day, which by the way was the day before my birthday. So,
Okay.
And on my birthday there was somebody that was taking pot shots at the machine gunner that was on the corner of the bunker line.
Right.
And they were taking pot shots at him, and half of the perimeter was secured by Screaming Eagles, and the other half was by Arvins.
We can hear you.
And the other half by Arvins. And one of the Arvins blew a fugas barrel that was on the bunker line for security, and he was hiding behind that, taking pot shots. So that took care of that problem. But other than that, Vega was the Firebase Vega was the toughest. We got hit a couple times on Vega, and unfortunately lost some people. It was an artillery fire base, and one of the guns got knocked out, and the people on that got wounded, and then we had a couple people killed. One of them was one of our captains, our S2, and the other fellow was actually from Bravo Company, and he was there. I don't know what they were doing, but they were walking the bunker line, and they got hit with one of the mortars. So.
Okay. All right. Well, did you go on any R&R while you were there?
Yes.
How many times?
Only once.
Only
well,
once.
Actually, I went on a day and a half. When we came in on stand down, they'd break down the company, and we'd go on a day and a half to a place called Eagle Beach, South China Sea, and that was something that the 101st ran. and it was pretty secure. We went there, and for a day and a half, you see some floor shows, and you know, you pretty much enjoy yourself. And then I went to Sydney, Australia in September before I came home at the end of October, and was there for 6 days, and that was pretty nice.
Yeah. What would you do?
Well, we went to what was called King's Cross, which I've had friends tell me now you would never want to go back there, but that was where all the soldiers went. They went down to the King's Cross, and there were different clubs, and the Pink Pussycat, and where we went was a place called the Red Garter. The Texas Tavern was upstairs, and it was a fantastic steak place. And then you go downstairs, and the Red Garter was like, you know, any nightclub you go to here. You know, it was really great. A lot of beautiful women, no ugly ones.
Okay.
So.
All right. So after that tour, where'd you go? What year was it?
That was 69 and 70.
Okay.
And then I came home in 70, and then I went to, I had 6.5 months left in the Army. I went to Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
And
What was your MOS?
I went back to artillery.
Okay.
So, and then I was on 155 SPs.
What's that?
Self-propelled. Looked like a little tank. They fire 155 rounds.
Okay.
So, and
where were you?
at Fort Hood.
At Fort Hood
At Fort
in
Hood.
Texas?
Yeah, that's
Okay. How long was that tour?
until I ETS'd. And I ETS'd. I was there for 6.5 months, but I actually only was there for 3.5 months. I got an 88-day drop to go back to school, to go to
Okay.
college. So I spent just over 21 months and 2 days that I spent in the Army the first time.
The first time?
Yeah.
And so then you separated?
I separated, I went back to school,
What did you go back to school for?
well, at that point I went to business administration.
Okay.
But still, my heart wasn't in it. It was just, I was able to get out early and go to
Right.
school. And,
Get a break?
yeah, at that point, my attitude was, I didn't want somebody always telling me what to do. And then as I was out, I realized it doesn't matter what job you are, even if you're your own boss, somebody's gonna tell you what to do, even if it's a customer, somebody will tell you.
How long did you stay out?
I was out just short of 18 months, a couple days short of 18 months. I went back in and stayed in E4,
Okay.
so.
And, okay, so you went back in. Where was your first duty base?
I actually got guaranteed the air defense option, the RADCOM option, and got guaranteed Detroit, the Detroit Air Defense. So I was 50 miles from, well, actually it was about 80 miles from home because it was in Mount Clemens. But it was Selfridge Air National Guard Base. And we were one of there was a small Army detachment that handled air defense. There was a small Air Force detachment that handled the radar. And then we also had 3 batteries in different parts of Michigan surrounding Detroit. One was National Guard, one was Reserve, and the other was an active Army.
And so you still sticking to your MOS of artillery?
At that point, no, I was in air defense artillery, ADA.
Air defense?
Air defense artillery,
Okay.
ADA, and that
Were
the
you
air defense artillery is Cobras. At that time, Nike Hercs, Hawk missiles, different types of missiles.
When you say Cobra, is that ordnance or is that a
No, the Cobra was the helicopter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that was in aviation, but they were also considered air defense.
Okay. So how long did that tour last?
I was there for 20 months.
Okay.
And then I went up to, and I stayed in air defense. I spent the rest of my time, I spent in either air defense or I had 8 years in recruiting. So,
Okay.
so I spent of that 19 years, or 19 and a half years. And I went to Alaska.
After that?
Yeah,
What year was that?
I went in May of 1974, and they were starting the pipeline at that time. And then when that finished, was sometime around September of 77, and they extended us so that we didn't actually leave until September of 77. Had absolutely nothing to do with the pipeline, but it fell in the same time frame. They were making lots and lots of money, and we weren't.
Okay.
So, but that was just over 3 years, 3 years and almost 4 months.
That you were in Alaska?
Yeah.
Okay, and where'd you go after that?
I put in for recruiting and got recruiting and went to the Lansing District Recruiting Command, Lansing, Michigan. I spent 18 months there and then re-enlisted to stay in recruiting, but to go to Toledo. And I was guaranteed the Cleveland Recruiting Command and was able to get Toledo. So I was back home
Oh, right.
for 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And
so-
how did that go?
Went well. I mean, I
Met
didn't.
your quotas? Did you meet your quotas?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I ended up getting my gold badge and 3 sapphires and was working on getting the ring when I ended up a station commander in a station that had all new people. And I'm not sure what was going on, but we had a couple of them that were learning well and a couple that weren't. So,
Okay. A couple of what?
a couple of soldiers who great soldiers. You got to understand, great NCOs, but not salesmen,
Right.
not recruiters, and
Right.
and they didn't like being there in the first place. And they
Yeah.
were at that point they were drafting people into recruiting. So if you were
Okay.
if you were a good NCO in your MOS, and your MOS was you were a mechanic, and you could tear an engine apart and put it back together, it didn't mean you were going to be able to go out and talk to people and sell them on joining the Army. So.
Right, exactly. Okay, where'd you go after that?
82, I went to Germany.
How long were you there?
I was there for 2 years.
Where in Germany?
I was in a place called Wildflecken.
Who?
Wildflecken, which is Wildflecken.
And where was that located in Germany?
Close to the 1K zone.
Where is that?
In the Fulda Gap, as if the Russians were ever going to come, they were going to come through the Fulda Gap if they were
Okay.
going to come into Europe. And we were close to our batteries, again, still air defense, but our batteries were in Fulda, Bad Bruckenau, and Bad Kissingen. So that was the surrounding area. That would be the air defense that would be assisting in stopping the Soviets, at that point the Soviets,
Right.
from coming through. So Wildflecken was fairly close to the 1K zone.
Were there any, okay, up to this point, now you're in, what city are you near? What,
Wildflecken would be close to, probably Bad Kissingen would be a big one. Fulda would be
how
a
far are you
big
from
city.
Berlin?
Berlin was in East Germany. At this point, we're probably. Well, I'll tell you, I never got there. Always wanted to go. You had to go through Checkpoint Charlie and then go straight to that. They told you when you went there. I think it was like maybe 80 miles. 90
Yeah,
miles.
okay.
But they told you if you got on that road, you couldn't. You couldn't say, oh, let's go down this road and see what's going on over there. Because if you did, then you could be arrested and held as a spy and everything
Right.
else.
Up
But
to- go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, but I never got, as many times I said I wanted to go there, and I even went back to Europe and wanted to go there and never made it. So we are going to. That's on my bucket list.
Okay, up to this point, after Vietnam, I think you've been to several TDYs, tours of duty. And so, any casualties? Anybody get hurt? Any injuries? Any?
Obviously, no combat. People get hurt, but I don't remember. Well, I take that back. In Alaska, we lost a plane. Was flying at 10,000 feet and coming up on a mountain that was 10,300 feet, and the air traffic controller said, go up 1,000 feet, and never got a response. And we lost an E-7, and there were some other people on the chopper, but the people that were directly involved with the ADCAP, there was an E-7, and there was Major Nelson. He had just made Major, and he was our ADCAP OIC. And he was on that plane, and they never found it. As far as I know,
Right.
they've never found it. Now, maybe
Did you learn to fly helicopters?
no.
No?
I learned how to get out of them.
All right. So after Germany, did anybody get hurt during that tour?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so. I don't
All right.
recall that.
So you said how long was that?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
So what year was that over, and where'd you go next?
I went in '82 and came back in November of '84. But I didn't spend the entire time there because I actually came down on orders DA select for ANOC, Advanced NCOES. Yeah, while I was in Germany,
Yeah.
it came out in the Army Times. I was a DA select for ANOC, Advanced NCOES.
Okay.
And I was going to have to go to Fort Bliss, Texas. And at that point, I was going to bring the family over to Germany, and because I came out right after I got to Germany, came out on the list, I was going to be there 7 months before I went to Texas, so I didn't bring the family with me. I didn't bring them until I came back from Texas. But I actually went and spent a couple weeks leave on each end, and then I also spent 11 weeks in Fort Bliss, Texas, in Air Defense School for Advanced NCOES. And before I did that, they sent me. They said I had to go to a BNOC because I hadn't gone to a BNOC or PLDC. I'd gone to a PLC primary leadership course for 2 weeks, and they had a 4-week course, and they said that 2-week course didn't count. So I had to go to Landstuhl. While I was in Germany, I went to Landstuhl, Germany for a 4-week PLDC. So that kind of prepared me for ANOC, and then when I got to ANOC, it was really a breeze.
Okay, and where was ANOC? What is ANOC?
Advanced NCOES.
Okay.
And that was in Fort Bliss, Texas, El Paso.
And how long were you there?
It was 11 weeks. The school was 11
Oh,
weeks.
it was tech school, okay.
Yeah.
So where did that prepare you to go to?
Well, when I got done with that, I went back home on leave for 10 days, 2 weeks, and then I went back to Germany. And when I went back to Germany, I went back, and the next day my wife and my son joined me.
Okay, cool. So how much longer were you there then?
I still had, that would have been, I grew in 82, I still had just over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Just barely over a year left.
Did they enjoy being in Europe?
Not at the beginning.
Okay.
My wife got to the airport, nobody spoke English, and I was supposed to pick her up, and the fellow that was taking care of my car ran out of gas, so he didn't do anything. So when I got in, I went to crank it, it was dead, the battery was dead, and then he tells me it was out of gas.
Right.
So I had to charge it, had to get gas, and by the time I got there, she'd been in the airport for like 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And she was in tears and everything. Nobody didn't know what I said, find a USO. There's a USO at the airport. Just go to the USO. People speak English.
I don't think she wanted to hear that right then.
No,
Okay.
no, she didn't. No, she didn't.
Okay, so what years? Okay, so you finished that tour.
Yep. November, came home Thanksgiving Day. Actually.
What year?
1984.
Okay, and so you came home on Thanksgiving Day,
Yes.
and the family with you.
No. They went home a little bit earlier because
Okay.
I had to prepare.
So they were there when you got there.
Yeah. So they were there when I got home.
Okay, so how long was that break?
I had to report to. Kansas. When I got home, I didn't have to report until I want to say it was like the 2nd of December.
Right.
No, it had to be later than that. It was sometime in December.
Okay.
And when we got there, the family didn't go with me again. They stayed home with our family, and I had to go get us set up. So I went to report there.
And where were we again? Sorry.
That was at Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay, and how long was the tour?
Well, it turned out that's stateside, so there's no set. I could have been there 6 months, and they could have shipped me somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
I was there actually almost 4 years. I got there January of '85.
And what was your MOS?
It was back to Air Defense,
Okay.
and at that point I was 16 Hotel, which is Air Defense Operations and Intelligence.
Thank you.
Yeah. They had combined the 16. I started at 16 Kilo and then 16 Hotel, and they combined them, and it was Air Defense Operations and Intelligence, which was a 16 Hotel.
Right.
But I always worked in the operations end.
Any casualties? Anybody get hurt? Good news.
Yeah, that was.
All right, so that was 4 years.
It was
And-
almost 4 years, and I put in again for recruiting, and I already had a pretty good record, so they told me, well, they're not going to accept you, and then about 2 weeks later, I got the orders saying, been accepted.
Okay.
So I went back to recruiting, did my last 3 years in Toledo.
Okay.
Sergeant Major told me from the Cleveland Battalion, at that point the DRC became the battalion, and the stations, recruiting stations became companies because they wanted to be more like, the regular Army when you're on a base and or on a fort. And so he had told me I could have Toledo, and when I got there he said, boy, I'd like to send you to Mentor, make you a station commander. And I said, well, I said, you know, whatever you feel is right, Sergeant Major. And so he went and he talked to the colonel. He came back and said, no, I promised you Toledo, you got Toledo. So I went back and I did my last 3 years in my hometown.
Okay. So what did you do after the service?
Retired, moved to Vegas.
And just retired?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now,
Well, when I got to Vegas, I did some work.
you did some work?
Yeah, I ended up working at a casino as a security.
Security officer?
Work security officer.
Okay, all right. And how did that go?
Did it for about 8 months and missed different things about Ohio and went back to Ohio and went to work for a finance company for about a year. And then after that, 11 months. And then after that, I decided to go back in the Army. I got married. 3 months later, I went back in the Army.
Okay. All right, so what happened?
No, wait a minute. I'm thinking, I flashed back to my first, that's when I got married. It was 3 months before I went back in the first time. No, after I went back to Toledo, I got a job with the post office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
All right.
You had me go backtrack.
I didn't do it. Go ahead.
I took the tests. You had to take several different tests for the
Right.
post office for different jobs. And I scored fairly well and got called in. They said, oh, it'll take forever. And I got called in about 3 weeks and got a job, went to work for the Holland Post Office. So
Okay.
I worked in Holland, the Holland, Ohio Post Office for, let's see, from 92 to 07. 92 to 07, no, 03. So 11 years at the Holland Post Office, and then I got transferred to the Sylvania Post Office. And I worked there for 6 years. So I had 20 years, 9 months in the Army, then I had 17 years and 9 months with the Post Office.
Wow, okay.
So 38 and a half years total with the federal government.
Federal government, yeah. It's extraordinary. Okay, several more questions. First of all, I know you didn't have any problem staying in touch with your family at all while you were in the military?
No.
No.
I wasn't
Okay.
married when I was in Vietnam. And
Huh?
I wasn't married when I was
Right.
in Vietnam, so
Well,
that
what
would've
about
been-
your forget about the married and children.
Yeah.
What about your regular family? Were you able to stay in touch with your family?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
no problem. How was the food throughout the service?
Well, for me, I've never had a problem with
Never
food.
had a problem. Okay, and did you always generally have all the supplies that you needed?
Yes.
Okay, good news. And so you were in combat, so I think I can answer the question that you do know what pressure and stress are about.
I like to think so. yeah.
Familiar, yeah, I got that. Okay. Did you leave out any place that you visited over your military career? You said you went to Australia, you were in Asia, you traveled around the United States. Anything, you were in Europe.
Yeah.
Any place else that you went that you didn't mention?
Well, when we were in Europe, we went to, my ex-wife and I, we went to Paris, and we also went to Holland.
Okay. Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Utrecht.
Amsterdam, Volendam, the fishing village,
Okay.
and the cheese factory, or the wooden shoe factory, and that was nice. And then, of course, Amsterdam was really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So, what did you think of, so you were an NCO, non-commissioned officer throughout?
yes.
What did you think of officers and your fellow soldiers in general?
It's like anything else. You have some really good people and you have some really bad people, and that's just an extension of society. I had a lot of very good officers, and I had a couple that didn't know their butt from a hole in the ground. So,
Right.
but had some really, really good officers.
And I think from conversation, I can take it for granted that at various times you used your GI Bill.
Yes, I did.
Okay. For house and education?
I used the first time I used for the house.
Okay.
And then that was when I got out the first time. And then the education, yeah, I used the original GI Bill, and then when I got out, I was using that, but because I was disabled.
Okay.
I was able to use chapter, I believe it was chapter 31, 30 or 31.
All right. Have you maintained any close relationships from the military?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
And do you belong to any veterans organizations today?
Yes, I'm a life member of the Disabled American Veterans,
GAV,
life member of the
okay.
VFW, life member of the 101st Airborne Division Association.
Okay. And so here, now we're down to the very end. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war, about the military in general?
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Okay. All right. And how did your service and experiences affect your life? That's it. Last question.
I think it made me a better person. And of course, this is my opinion, but I think it made me a better person because I feel a lot more confident. And when I go for a mission, I know there's always a way to solve a problem. It's just you have to look. You can't just give up, and you can't just assume that there are no solutions. So I just look for answers when we have some sort of a problem that we need to solve. Hopefully that works. So far it has.
Okay. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for a great interview, and I also want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.